So last week here at the studio, we were hosting a workshop and we had a guest presenter in, and most of the workshop, he was fielding questions from our audience all about the technique of his creative work. So everything from camera placement, camera settings, his lighting approach, how he composed his shots, what his post-production process was like. And then about two-thirds through the process of the event, all of a sudden people started to ask the questions that I personally, hosting the event and sitting in the back of the room, kind of monitoring this whole thing, I thought they were just too afraid to ask for most of the event. And that was, well, what do we do after we make these great photos or these great videos? What do we do to actually start turning this into a profit? And they held those questions off to the end. Like I said, I was under the impression because they were just scared to ask them. So that's what we're kind of going to unpack in today's episode of the Beyond the Image podcast, which is the business side of the creative industry. So let's dive right into that. Are you tired of the endless stream of fantasy marketing and vanity metrics? Yeah, so am I. My name is James Patrick, and I'm an internationally published photographer, media specialist, and marketing strategist. As a creative entrepreneur, I face the same exact frustrations you have, being bombarded by generic advice that promises success, but never lives up to the hype. We need to move beyond the posturing, beyond the facade, beyond the image to navigate the unique challenges we face as creatives. Together, we're going to dive into real stories, real strategies, and the real work that can lead to the real results. This is the Beyond the Image podcast. What is going on? And thank you so much for tuning to this or latest episode of the Beyond the Image podcast. I'm honored to be joined by Joel Pilger. Joel, where are you tuning in from?
I am actually in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. I'm traveling this week, normally based in New York City.
Okay. All right. Well, we're only what, an hour difference.
Okay.
So what you do is you're focused on really helping creatives dial in on the business aspect of their work. But I'm curious to pull the timeline back a little bit further. What did you do before you started working with professionals to develop their professional side?
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here, and it's great to hang out with you and have this conversation about the business side. In short, I had a very creative and also entrepreneurial childhood. But in 1994, I launched a studio that focused on animation, effects. Eventually, it became a creative agency called Impossible Pictures that was based in Denver. And I ran that for 20 years. It was quite successful, grew it to 25 full-time people, about $5 million a year. We did all kinds of branding for TV networks, entertainment companies, brands, and so forth. And then after I exited that business after 20 years, I said, man, how can I help everybody do what I just did? And that became my mission, was to help everyone master what I call master the art of the business.
What do you think is really at the heart of why so many creatives, because this is such a universal thing, why are so many creatives struggling with the business side of their businesses?
It really comes from, I think, an upbringing where we as young people, we go to school inside of a system where we play by the rules. We're taught to be good followers. And even if we're creative people, we learn a craft, and then we get out and we sort of are taught, or we pick up this myth along the way that says, you know what, if we're just really good at this craft, we do this really awesome creative thing at a high level, the rest is going to take care of itself. And there are models and heroes that are held up to us as this brilliant creative, that brilliant artist, this performer, whatever. Just be like them and you're going to be successful. And then the reality is that if we don't master the business side, we eventually run out of steam. And we have to, in a way, go back to school and start to master this whole other side of this career in order to be successful. And I'm not going to lie, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of learning and growing and evolving and testing, failing. And a lot of creative people just inside say, I just want to make stuff.
Yeah. I So my background, I got my degree actually in journalism,
Mhm.
but no one taught me how to get a job in journalism.
Right.
And so when I was cut free from college, I I ended up making a connection. I got a job in marketing, and I was working that job in marketing whilst growing my business as a photographer on the side. So every evening, every weekend, I was just hustling to build my work as a creative professional. But I really attribute the reason I was able to grow my business to the fact that I was actually having a full-time career in marketing. And so everything
Interesting.
I was learning, and it was a professional services company, everything I was learning to market this company, I could then take and shift or manipulate to focus on my growth at the time as an entrepreneur. And so that was an invaluable experience for me. And I'm curious, what was it for you that helped you see or helped you start to learn the business side of the agency that you were building and trying to grow?
Well, I was very fortunate that this journey for me started like when I was a kid, because like the big first thing I remember was being 12 years old, and my best friend Mike and we got an 8 millimeter camera, and we said, wouldn't it be awesome to make a movie, hire the neighborhood kids, let's create this movie, let's edit it, let's open a theater, let's sell tickets and have all the kids come see themselves in the movie, let's sell popcorn, let's right do all the branding and the marketing and make money at this. And that, of course, led to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I have so many stories. So for me, it was always very natural, even as an industrial design major at Georgia Tech. I was the only student in my class that was actively freelancing while I was going to school, because for me, there was never there was never any other way I was going to do it. So in a way, I'm unfortunately probably not. It's probably not encouraging to people that are saying, "Well, I can't go back and be 12 years old again."
What do you feel like for you helped you balance? Because ultimately, like, there are parts of, like, running a business that I do feel are fairly right-brained, okay? Like, creatively conceptualizing a marketing rollout, the storytelling element of it. These are all creative elements that can be infused into business development. Um, Now on the other side, a lot of business development is very left-brained. It's very analytical. It's very, strategic, and that dichotomy, I think, is a big barrier for a lot of people, and they feel like if they invest it all into one, it might infringe upon or sacrifice the other. How have you kind of balanced, volleying back and forth between the right brain creative side, which is, what really drew us into the work we're in? We didn't get into a creative field to not be
Yeah,
creative, whilst
yeah.
also having that business analytical side.
I mean, the for me, the big unlock was around 2001. I went through this experience where I had been in business for 7 years running this studio, and it had never really grown beyond myself and my spouse at the time. I had one employee off and on, and I just knew there was way more out there for me. I went through some entrepreneurial training through an organization called the Strategic Coach. And one of the things that they taught me was this idea of being very, very what they called focused on your unique ability. Now, this is something I've since, we call it the zone of genius. Some people call it your superpower. And what I learned was, in a way, for a season in our career, we're creative and we have this craft. But then we realize to reach this next level, we have to master all this business stuff. And that might be things like spreadsheets and sales and marketing and all, managing production and budgets and all that stuff. And what I would say is the journey is, as you start to learn that stuff and master it, now you're able to delegate it. Until you master it, you can't really delegate it. You cannot just hire a salesperson and say, hey, go get me jobs. It just doesn't work. Trust me. But once you master the fundamentals of that, you are now able to delegate those areas and then come back to that genius, as I call it, And now you're able to focus on the thing that you love, knowing that all of these other areas of the business are working because you have a team supporting you as they do their genius, you're doing your genius. And this combination is like hugely powerful. It's anybody that's really successful in a creative industry is focused. It's really just that simple. So that was, I call this the 171 journey of, you kind of have your creative thing, and then you go master these all 7 areas, and then you kind of come back to your one true love. But it's obviously, it's quite a journey.
I really appreciate this idea of mastering something internally before you go to outsource it or delegate it. And the example I can think of this, I used to run an event coaching company, and we would have we grew from, like, my first year, I think we had 50 people, and we grew it up to 500-600 people. And one of the hardest things for me in growing this was scalability. If my time is spent finding the right speakers, building the ethos of the brand and trying to grow the brand, I can't be the one going out and trying to sell this thing like I did my first 2 years or so. So what we eventually did was we figured out what it took to master the sales element of this, what those conversations look like, because, yes, we did advertising. Yes, we did earned media and, digital marketing, but most of our sales came from outbound. So just, one-to-one connections. We had to really master what those conversations looked like and felt like, because when we tried to hire salespeople before we had mastered it ourselves, well, it didn't work and we lost money on those
Yeah.
salespeople. But when we were able to master that approach, this is what this conversation needs to sound like. This is what this approach needs to look like. All of a sudden, that became the training for the salespeople, and that then is how we built that blueprint of how we took this from 50 people in a small room at a Holiday Inn to 500-600 people at more of a large scale production. And I think that can be a microcosm for really any element of the business, like from
That's right.
post-production to responding to client inquiries. So I think I'm really glad that you pointed that out. I'm curious, from a bird's eye view, what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions that creative professionals have about the business development side?
Oh, about business development specifically?
Hmm.
Well, I mean, the biggest misconception of all time is what I call the myth of great work, which is, if we just focus on doing great work, the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah.
And I mean, that one is a big one, because I can point to any number of creative companies that are producing amazing, brilliant work. And there's the misconception is, we see all that great work and we go, oh, well, of course they landed that client. Of course they got that project, because look at all this beautiful work. That is the facade. If you actually go behind the scenes, trust me, you are going to find a very hardworking, battle-tested marketing foundation and sales expertise there. That stuff does not sell itself. And that I mean, we can just go on from there, but that's an easy one, I would say, is the biggest misconception.
Hmm. Yeah, I've seen a lot of creatives fall into a status of just reactive marketing. I'm just going to try to create the best work, post the work on my website or on social media, and then just react should anyone respond to it. React when if people end up, popping into our email inbox with a job inquiry. And it's really hard to build any budget around the anticipation of inbound traffic off something that may or may not generate any leads. I was thinking about, like, the full client journey from discovery to sale. And whenever I ask creatives what they need the most help with, the response almost unanimously is, well, I just need more leads. If I can get more leads, then everything else will be solved for me. And I feel like that might be missing a few of the steps from, client nurturing to building trust and rapport to actually being able to close sales, bidding, negotiating, all these different things. But I'm curious what your thoughts were. Do you think the biggest problem we have is we're just not attracting enough leads, or are there other big missed opportunities that creative professionals really should be pausing to examine?
Yeah. Well, let's just say this. When we talk about sales, we have to first of all define it, which I call it uh, sharing your expertise and building relationships. So
Mhm.
that's what sales is. And then we have to define what marketing is. And I define that as simply marketing is all the things that we do so that sales can do its work. So it's things like awareness, exposure, right? Reputation, that kind of thing. So when people say we need more leads or just get me in the room, if I just get me in the room, I'll close the deal. There's actually a whole journey, as you've described, that does require some serious thought of how are you taking people on this journey from unaware to now being aware to being interested to having intent and now award. Right now we've won a project and we have a client and we have a relationship. And some people describe this as the journey of from know to like to trust, which I
Mhm.
think is a really nice, simple paradigm. But I would say probably the biggest element that I think people miss out on is if you're not good at marketing, you're going to suck at sales, period. Like hard stop right there. And when I talk about marketing, probably the biggest area where people struggle is positioning, meaning how do we take our business model, translate it into something that the outside world can see, get excited about, be curious about, and that's what generates a lead. And I would say this, probably to most of your listeners, certainly the studios and production companies that I work with, probably 90% of them suck at positioning. They're very generic, they're very bland, they're very input. They're selling inputs like services and skills and talent.
Mhm.
And what the world cares about out there, especially as budgets increase and buyers, go more and more elite, they care about outcomes, outputs, results. So figuring out how to properly position yourself and message so that when you go out into the world, your ideal buyers are saying, wow, what is that? Tell me more. Yes, I'll take this call. Yes, I'll have that meeting. That is the big unlock that a lot of people get hung up on because it is really, really hard to, I call it, carve out your positioning and clarify that message so that you can go out with total confidence and clearly articulate when somebody says, James, who are you and what do you do? You can just nail it. And people go,
Mhm.
wow, tell me more. Tell me more.
This is, I mean, hitting at such a um, important time in my own journey as a creative because to give a quick context, most of my career as a photographer was really predicated in the sports and wellness industry, and I really carved out a very successful niche for myself within that industry, and for years really campaigned that. And I love the thing you said, which is you're selling outcomes, and that's really what I had focused on in my career was
Mm,
positioning myself as a person who delivered a different outcome than my competitors. For
mm,
so long, my work was known within that industry. My work was the work getting into printed media. And for most of my clients, that was the aspiration. Well, who are you going to hire? Well, the person who is shot at the time 500 or so newsstand covers. That became the unique differentiator is, yeah, you can hire someone and everyone can take great pictures. My pictures get published. And
mm.
that we marketed for so long. Well, we're in 2025 now. Print media is not that much of a thing anymore. And so,
Yep.
we had set that aside a couple of years ago, realizing one, this is not really an industry that has a viability for us to be championing. And two, it's not as big of an aspiration that our target clients are interested in anymore. So we're working with our clients right now and just trying to pay attention, study what outcomes do they care about now? What are the things that they want moving forward? And we're on to a few things. Like part of it is just content production for a lot of our clients who are very active, particularly with content production on socials, and trying to ensure reliable and recurring content for them. That's one thing we're looking at. But what are some of the things that you've come across that you've seen that you're like, oh, that's a really clever position that you've seen people moving from a generic positioning to a positioning of here is an outcome that we are delivering to our clients?
Gosh, I can think of a couple examples. Let me give you the concept, and then I'll share at least one example. The concept that I really love to do nowadays is a concept I call productizing, which is where I'm going to take these various services that I have and roll them up into an expertise.
Mhm.
And that expertise is defined based on outcomes and results, as we've shared here. But then I'm going to take that and I'm going to name it, and I'm going to put a TM on it,
Mhm.
because this is something you can only buy from me and my studio. So this might be a proprietary method. It might be a certain point of view. It could be maybe it's just a technical expertise. It's any number of things. But this productized rendition of this thing becomes very unique, because you could go out to the marketplace and say, we are the inventors of blank, and it has a TM on it. So it's a thing, and you can only get it from that one studio. Now, one example that I would give is I love these guys. There's a studio in LA called BN, BIEN.
Mhm.
And when I was working with these guys years ago, they were saying, we are all in on a belief or a mission they called inclusive motion design. I'm like, what? Huh? What is that? And as they explained it to me, I said, oh my God, that's actually really cool. Their belief was that we should not only produce motion design that is inclusive and representative of the audiences who are watching this content, but it should be made, it should be created by those people as well. And there's a whole method around how you do that. So these smart folks, we said, well, this could be a thing. So they took inclusive motion design and they collapsed it into a word called NMOD. So imagine collapsing the words, and it's NMOD trademark.
Mhm.
And when you go to BN's website now, you see they have this specialized expertise of inclusive motion design called NMOD. And there is a whole process of what it is and how it works. And there's only one place you can get it. And then you look at their body of work, you look at what their clients have to say about them, and you realize, oh, damn, this is on point. And they have been crushing this lane. And this is, again, just one example that I really love, because they've created what? They've created onlyness that stands out in the sea of sameness,
Mhm.
because they have and it's based on their mission and purpose. So it's not, this is not a synthetic, like let's put lipstick on a pig called we do what everybody else does. Like
Yep.
they had to get really clear about what is it that we are truly called to do. Let's get clear about that. Now let's package it. Now let's sell it, in effect. And I think I'm so excited about their journey, because they've just continued to grow and double down on that and go further, and now reach into new markets. And they're now starting to break into entertainment and out of tech, and all kinds of things have now become possible. But that's one example I hope is helpful.
Oh, it absolutely is. I love this idea of really becoming a champion of your methodology, and it really just kind of forces you to look at your process. And even though other companies might have a similar process, when you start to peel back the layers and start to ask yourself, could our competitors say the same? Like, we do professional work. Could our competitors say the same? Yeah, we care about our clients. Well, yeah. um another way to look at it is, would your competitors say they don't do these things? But when
Right.
you start to peel back and all of a sudden you can start to articulate why your approach matters, in fact why you've honed in a specific approach, and why you believe this approach is the path to a successful campaign, even though another company may have a similar approach, the fact that you peeled back the layers and you mapped it out and branded it,
Yes.
ostensibly, all of a
Yes.
sudden that becomes what you're championing. And a client may have never heard of this, or they wouldn't have heard of this approach, but they see your passion for this approach and they see you laying out the story of how this approach led to these specific outcomes for these clients, created wins for their clients. You're creating the outcome for the client. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. And I loved the example you just gave of how to sort of test, right? Test your positioning, right? What our competitors say, no, we don't do that. And I've got another really good test for you. There's this simple, call it hack, that I invented years ago called A to the. And what I encourage people to do is take your positioning statement that sits on the top of your about page, or it sits on your LinkedIn profile, where it says something like, we are a studio that, or we are a production company, blah, 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 and change that little word A to the. And what you're going to find out is real fast, you are speaking very generically by design. It immediately reveals that if, like, we are a production company that, is passionate about immersive storytelling, and then you change that word to the, you instantly realize, ooh. And my encouragement is, you actually are unique. You just got to get in touch with what makes you unique. And it takes a lot of bravery. It takes courage. It's scary because we want our peers to like us and think we're cool. But I ask you, are you speaking to your peers, or are you speaking to your clients and your buyers and the people that have real problems that need you? And if you are, be brave, be the only.
I really like that. Yeah, and I I would say, like, if your peers are going to be offended by your positioning, then they're probably not peers that you'd want to be keeping that close within your
Mhm.
circle. I think the more unique and the more different you can craft that positioning, the more you're going to see others wanting to emulate it. And I think that's when you've actually struck onto something. Um, a thing I hear often is, uh, particularly from creatives, I'm bad at sales. I'm just not good at sales. I like creating. I can post a lot. I can create content that promotes the services that I do, but I just get so nervous when it comes to actually selling myself, and I don't want to come off too salesy. That's another thing I hear a lot. And
Uh-huh.
my response has always been, well, then you don't know what sales is. And you had an example of what sales actually breaks down in. But I'm curious, like, your take on this, of why creatives are so sales adverse.
Yes, I love the question. And yeah, I'll repeat. Here's the reason we say that we hate sales: is we have had bad experiences where we've been sold to, and I'm going to put air quotes around that.
Mhm.
And it's creepy, right? Where we feel pressured, and someone's putting an expectation on us, and someone's trying to get us to buy. And let's just take that version of sales out back and shoot it. Because when I say, no, 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 you know what sales is? Sales is, first of all, starting out with being an empathetic human and recognizing that your future has nothing to do with you. Your success, all the opportunity, everything. Like, if you spent the rest of your life on a deserted island, you're not going to be successful. Your future is utterly wrapped up in the otherness. So once you think about that, you go, oh, right, I need to be empathetic and be curious and be listening for the problems out there, And then I go, okay, now sales, we're going to redefine as building relationships and sharing your expertise. That's all I want you to do. So when you go into a room, you get to just be you and connect with people and be curious and ask lots of questions, start to form relationships with these people, listen to their problems, and then share your expertise because you're excited about what you do, right? Don't you love the problems you get to solve and the work that you get to create? And this is often the unlock for people as they start to realize, oh, you mean I don't have to pretend, I don't have to fake, I don't have to pose and posture? And the answer is no, because actually, as your journey in selling, again, I don't like the word myself either, but when you start getting into multiple 5-figure and 6-figure and 7-figure deals, it is all about trust. It is all about managing risk. And those relationships are so much built on trust, not the talent and not the skills. It's these other elements that become much, much more important. So just start practicing that. Start saying, I'm just going to show up as me, be genuine and be generous.
I could not appreciate that more. I always looked at sales so similar in the sense of one, you have to give a shit about your clients. And if you don't give a shit about your clients, you can't sell, at least effectively, over a
Yeah,
long period of time. You might have transactional relationships, but you're never going to resell.
that's
And
right.
two, you have to believe in what you're selling. And if it's your work and you believe in your work and you're excited about your work, well, yeah, you're going to be passionate about that. And if you care about your clients, then really this is just a connecting these two things. And several times over the course of this conversation, you've brought back relationships. It's relationships that create these long-term transactions these projects that build upon each other, these projects that can lead to bigger projects. It's getting to know people and understanding what their pain points are, what their needs are, and being able to position yourself as the right firm or agency or creative or outlet to solve those problems or satisfy
Mhm.
those needs. And nothing about that is deceptive. Nothing about that is sleazeball. Nothing about that is backhanded. It's very you know transparent and open of, okay, let's just talk and let's learn what it is that you have to um that would solve your issues as an end user of creative. So then it just is a matter of how do business owners, creatives, get themselves in the rooms to meet these people. Like what, and obviously this could be more case specific, but what are areas or avenues that you encourage creatives to look into when it comes to actually being able to meet the people that they could be serving?
Well, for starters, 2 words, LinkedIn. Okay.
Okay. I'm so
Like
excited
that's
about yeah, I'm so excited about where you're going to go with this.
so first of all, you have to be visible and you have to be generous and take risks on others' behalf. And it's like when you show up and if you walk up to somebody you don't know and you say, hey, I have a small gift for you, or hey, can I buy you a drink or something like that? What are you doing? You're being generous in a moment, but you're also taking a risk. You're making a small investment. A
Hmm.
bid for connection is what relationship people call this. And when you do that, the person sees, wow, that person just took a risk. They put a small investment with no guarantee of return on my behalf. Okay, that's the same thing that we do on social media when we share a post about our thinking, about the story, the thing that just happened, the insight that we've just discovered, whatever it is. It's this form of being generous and being visible in the world. And what I can tell you is if you do that for 10 years, you will have thousands of people that follow you and pay attention and notice you. And then phase 2 is get out from behind your monitor and get out into the real world. That
Hmm.
means conferences. That means going to major markets like New York and LA. I mean, there's a reason I'm based in New York these days. It is so important to get into your client's world. However, I know it's hard, and people are like, but which conference should I go to? And I don't know how to get into my client's office. And I'm like, you know what? I didn't know this either, but did I find a way? I sure as hell found a way somehow, some way, because the people who are successful at this game that we're talking about here, James, are the people who push a little further beyond what everybody else does. And everybody else is sending a cold email. Everyone else is posting their work. Everyone else is polishing their show reel. And my question is, and what are you doing that makes you stand out as the person who cares a little bit more? Who, like you said it earlier, you can't say you care. You actually have to care. And it over time, that makes such a difference.
I love the example, like what conference do I need to be at? And I put that akin as to when someone is trying to get into photography for the first time, they're asking, well, what's the best camera that I should be buying? I'm like, whichever one you use, that's the best camera.
Right.
Like, yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, which is like, I know where my target clients are. I know who I want to be serving, and I know what trade organizations they're a part of. So I know what luncheons I'm going to. I know what luncheons I might be sponsoring. Hell, I know what luncheons I might work to be the actual presenter at. So I can be delivering value to them. And that's because I have spent the time to get to know the clients that I want to be serving. In a few weeks, I made a deal with a trade organization where I'm going to be filming all their new board members, all their incoming board members, creating video reels of all their new incoming board members. Why? Because every one of these board members runs the marketing and business development for a different company that I want to be working with. And what better way to demonstrate what I can do by doing, right?
Well, and you're also doing it in person, right? You're doing this in person. There is this actual exchange that happens when we're in the room with people that separates us utterly in their minds from everybody else that's just showing up in their inbox and rapidly falling below the fold.
A couple of years ago, got hired to work this commercial production. I was hired to do the stills, and another production company was hired to do the motion.
Okay.
And the person that hired me was very clearly not the person who was going to be running the future of the creative for this company. Okay. And we saw that right away. We saw that there's going to be a shift in the creative director. And we also saw that the creative director had a phenomenal relationship with the motion company. We saw that on set. And I remember looking at my assistant and said, we are never going to get hired again to do stills for this company. I promise you. Like, it doesn't matter how good the work we produce is, they're going to get it. And within 6 months, they had the contract, because you just saw it on set. They had the relationship.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah. I'll say it this way too. There's a good buddy of mine that is at a really high level at a studio in New York called Sibling Rivalry. And I heard him say something the other day when he said, throughout my career, it's been this evolving journey of I just love working with all my friends. And then you realize his friends are at Sony and Apple and Virgin, and you're like, how did you do this? And like what you just shared is so true, that when you think that your work being a little bit better than the person who has the amazing friendship and relationship and hangs out and has drinks with and goes skiing with person, you are deluded. I hate to tell you, like, you're just deluded. This is why when I was running my studio, James, I would 3 to 4 times a year, I would get on a plane and go to New York or to Washington, D.C., where all the Discovery networks were. Did I have a meeting there? I would find one. I would create one. I would somehow get out there and take these people to dinner. I would invite them to Colorado and take them skiing. because I wanted to be friends with them. Because, first of all, it's awesome having amazing friends that are in the same industry with you, but it's great business. It's great for your career at the same time.
Nothing, I think, can beat that in-person, face-to-face connection. When I was early in my career, I would go out to New York, like you, every other year, and I would just bring a book of work, and I would just try to get as many face-to-face meetings with photo editors or creative directors as I could, um, in the week that I was there. And, I would start like a couple months before, start putting in my calls, right, to the different
Yes.
photo editors. And, the response was usually, well, give me a call when you're out here, which, is like, you're like, well, please, please. And then, you eventually get, a handful of meetings while you're out there. And then, when I wasn't meeting, I was running office to office, dropping my book off at the front desk and being, with a note like, I'm in town this week. Let's,
Yes.
and did I get work out of those? The thought is, well, yeah, you'd get work, but yeah, not that day and not that
Yeah.
month, not that year. But all of a sudden, when you meet with someone over and over and over again, you develop rapport with them. All of a sudden, now something starts coming in. I had met with one creative director. Thought the meeting went well, and then didn't hear from them for a while. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to stay in touch with them. Every month, I'm going to send them a postcard of a new photo of my work. And 9 months later, I've heard nothing. And I'm just depressed as all hell. I'm on Instagram and they posted a photo of them working late on production night. And I noticed something on the wall behind them in their photo. And I was like, that looks familiar. So I zoomed in. It was one of my postcards. And I was
Love
like,
it.
right. So I went and checked my notes. And it was the first postcard I sent them 9 months earlier. I was like, okay, so this has been on their wall most of the year. And I haven't heard from them, which just means just stay in touch. Like they're like, I'm like, a few months later, they were hiring me. But that was that light bulb moment of, oh, they're paying attention. I just haven't been in touch enough. Not that there's a specific number, but like it could be that next phone call that turns something into an actual foundation of a relationship. But it took that persistence and those repetitive repetition losing the word the repetitive contact before a project yielded itself.
Yeah, repetitions. Yeah, there's something to be said for, you just keep showing up and you get in the reps. It just becomes second nature. You're basically shifting into what I would call an investor mindset. Where yes, I'm a creative, but I'm also an investor. And what I'm doing is I'm doing all these little, like I call them tossing seeds into the future. So you look down the
Mm.
path and you go, I'm going to throw a seed out there every day, every day, every day. And guess what? Most of those seeds die.
Yeah.
Most of them die, but not all of them. And eventually you're going to walk up on one of those and say, wow, that one turned into a little seedling. And look at that one. That one's a little tree. All the other ones died. And it seems at times like a wasted effort, right? You sent those postcards month after month after month. But I'm also just going to challenge everybody that in the world that we're in, how bad do you want it? Like, if you don't want it more than the next guy or gal, you're probably not going to get it. Now, this is an encouragement in a roundabout way. It's like a tough love encouragement of if you really want it, go for it. Step out, do the thing that makes you you. And if you just keep showing up, I see this over and over and over again. I'm just going to say it's going to be great. It's going to be freaking great. So hang in there.
And that's another thing I'm glad you brought up, which is like, yeah, it can be a little defeating to like be throwing things out into the void and not knowing if anything is sticking. But I really contrast that against any relationship that I have started to cultivate and realizing that, well, this relationship had an origin as well. And at some point, this began with me just reaching out and introducing myself, or meeting at an event and shaking hands, or me traveling across the country to sit down with them. And it's reminding myself of those relationships, which helps really just propel me. And actually, that's what excites me as a creative, which is the fact that I get to create new relationships that can, putting monetary goals completely aside, that I can just create relationships with people that I can have awesome collaborations with, that this
Yeah.
could lead to something really fun and really exciting and really adventurous that maybe I haven't done before. And that's what kind of motivates me to continue to, do this outbound. I do want to circle back because you had mentioned LinkedIn, and I'm curious why you believe, because not that I don't believe in LinkedIn. I just I want to know what I'm missing about LinkedIn.
Mhm.
What am I not doing on LinkedIn that I should be doing to get more out of it?
Great question, right? Hard for me to diagnose without, without knowing more. But what I what I am finding to be really true about LinkedIn is it absolutely destroys things like cold email, because it is a platform where everything is contextualized. Okay.
Mhm.
So when I'm on there and I'm looking around and I see, maybe I'm reading a post from somebody and I see a comment from this guy, James. And I kind of go, oh, that's interesting. What did he have to say? I hover over his name. I see a little byline. I see a little tagline of what James is. Oh, that's kind of cool. What's that? I click on that. I now see your picture. I see your resume. I see the company that you're affiliated with. I see a big picture up at the top of the banner. And it just goes on from there. If I click on your company, I have instant context. And guess what? It is always up to date. It is, I can see people that I know that we have in common. Like, everything is contextualized. What this does is it creates much faster trust. Because when you go on LinkedIn and you see a profile where the person doesn't have a picture or they have 0 followers, you immediately go, whoa. But guess what? That's what cold email is. Nobody
Mhm.
knows anything about you when they get a cold email. It's ridiculous. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say about LinkedIn is I would just encourage people that you have much more expertise and insight to share than you realize. And if you are only sharing your work, that is like not even scratching the surface. Here's my little tip or hack, because I started doing this several years ago, and now I'm teaching all of my clients in my community how to do this. When it comes time, first of all, do not write posts in advance and schedule them. Big fail, because you're not actually showing up into a conversation.
Mm.
Instead, I want you to
Mhm.
think of this. When you find yourself getting really fired up, either really pissed off or really excited about something, I want you to stop and just take note. What am I getting riled up about? And then find a time later that day or maybe in the morning and say, I'm going to talk about that. And what you're going to do is you're going to tell a story. You're not going to make a case. You're going to tell a story, because you're going to anonymize that story. And you're going to say, like, if you're James, you're going to say, one thing that drives me crazy is people who don't begin with the end in mind. Okay, so I've just dropped a bold assertion. Then you're going to tell a story. Just a few days ago, I was talking with one of my clients, and you anonymize it, right? Works at a big brand in sports. And what's killing me is blah, 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 blah. What I wish they knew was blah, 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 blah. If you feel the same way, chime in, comment, DM. If you start practicing this habit, trust me, you will start to generate conversations with people, because you are coming from a place of realness and authenticity, of you're actually excited about this. You're actually pissed off about this. And there's something weird about us as humans. We can pick up on it. When you sit down and compose a nice post in advance and you try and think of something interesting to share, boring. And then you schedule it, double boring. It's not resonating. And I don't know how to explain it other than I want everyone to tap into the realness, the rawness, the authenticity of all of this knowledge and insight and expertise that you have that the world is actually really excited to hear about. We just got to let it out.
What really strikes me on this is, like, I feel like when we share our work, it to some degree it's self-serving. It's,
Oh,
celebrate me for this
absolutely.
thing I did. Yeah.
Mhm.
But your approach is, I think, doing two things simultaneously. One, it's giving value to your audience, and that value is education, inspiration, could be entertainment, but you're giving something whilst also showing what you do. But you're not leading with what you do. You're leading with what is valuable to the audience. And I think that is such a great way to open that gate. And what a phenomenal way to earn that first level of attention. So now all of a sudden, now that curiosity gets piqued of, well, what do they actually do? And it's a way to promote without really promoting at all. And I think that's such a beautiful balance between those two.
So first of all, I forbid anyone from ever posting check out and then fill in the blank. Check out our latest show reel. Check out this recent project we just did for whatever. If you ever find yourself saying that, just know that you deserve to be shunned by everyone, all of your followers, because it is so presumptuous. Instead, I want you to always remember that as your friend, as your follower, as somebody out there on LinkedIn, as a buyer, my question is always, why should I care? And if we're not answering that question, don't post. Like, don't share your work and don't do the whole, like, our friends at fill in the blank brand name called on us to do this and we're excited to share it. I don't know how to say this any more gently. No one cares. But if you contextualize it with insight, sometimes it's even just like we have a rant in common. Like, what is it we have in common? What are we talking about? Why should I care? If you can answer that question for me, I will look at your work all day, every day.
I love that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Echo that. First, I want to thank you for giving your time. Like, absolutely enjoyed. I can't believe, like, you never know going into an interview what's gonna go down.
Right.
We've had ones where I look at the clock and I'm like, oh man, we got to wrap this thing up, and only 5 minutes have gone by. And then I look at the clock, I'm like, oh wow, we're at that hour mark. To me, that's indicative of an interview when I'm insatiably curious. First, appreciation and gratitude to you for taking the time. Where can listeners go to learn more about the work you're doing and potentially connect with you further?
Well, obviously you can find me on LinkedIn, Joel Pilger. I'm the one and only. But my website is simply joelpilger.com, and you can learn more about the community that I run called Forum. I have a podcast called The Fabulist, and I also host a dinner series called Fuse all around the world. So yeah, I would just encourage people to go there. And thank you, James. This has seriously been killer. I can tell we're like brothers from another mother.
It is just, yeah, I'm always appreciative when, like, conversations get so simpatico. So huge thanks. And we're going to put all those links in the show notes and encourage all the listeners to check that out. And Joel, thank you again. And hope you have some safe travels right now.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate the conversation.